The following is a legal advertisement from Gwendolyn J Sterk and the Family Law Group. This does not constitute legal advice and should not be construed as such. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only.
Hi, this is Regan Freitag with the Gwendolyn J Sterk Family Law Group.
And this is Gwendolyn Sterk, and we're here today to talk about bullying. We must tell you that bullying is a very serious issue, and it is something near and dear to our hearts because we feel that there are a lot of children who are victims, as well as adults who are victims now, and there is legal help that's available, and I think people aren't aware of it, so we want to explore some of those options.
And I think it's maybe one of those newer issues, and you see it on the news, and are legislators and are the schools, are people actually dealing with it? Yes, it's against the law, Gwen.
Okay, but come on. Politicians are bullying each other, so what's the difference?
Well, it's against the law to cyberbully, revenge porn. I mean, nowadays, schools are required to have policy or handbooks on that. I mean, this issue has gotten so bad that, there are laws in place, thank goodness. I mean, maybe the politicians aren't really following their own laws, but, well, we'll hope.
We'll hope for the future on that one. But nevertheless, I think that it is important to understand that bullying is an issue that has to be distinguished from what I think people label drama.
Yes. Unfortunately, people love drama. They love gossip.
Oh, gossip. Come on. Yeah.
Hey.
And I'm talking about in my real life experience, it's not just young people. They gossip all the way up, and professionals, non-professionals, everybody gossips, men and women, and I think men are worse, don't you?
I absolutely agree. Whether it's happening in the courthouse, whether you're seeing it in campaigns, whether you hear about neighbors, I mean, it's everywhere. Or how about the parents at the sporting events?
Oh, they're ridiculous.
It's pretty embarrassing. And to have these kids see that is just sad, because then they grow up to be just like them.
Well, and they do. And then they act it out, and they do it at school and other issues. So there are remedies, and I would think that there are remedies both on the criminal side as well as on the civil side.
Yeah, most definitely. Your typical electronic bullying, cyberbullying, revenge porn, those are class 4 felonies. It depends on, if there's repeated offense. The class 4 can turn into a class 3 if you're repeated defendant or felon. I mean, it only gets worse, and so does the punishment. My goodness. I mean, a class 4 felony has jail time.
Okay, but if I only, I'm mad. Let's just do a hypothetical. So I find out that you're, engaged in a relationship with my spouse. So I call you and I start screaming at you. Look, that's been going on before we had, when I first started practicing law a long time ago, before we had computers, Facebook, all these iPhones, the spouse, a good old-fashioned fight, you'd call up and yell, "Why'd you steal my spouse?" Right?
You mean people actually talk on the phone? They just don't text?
Well, they did in the dark ages. But what is the difference? Where do you draw the line? How much is it going to be just gossip where now you're engaged in bullying?
Well, I mean, we all have to remember we do have our First Amendment right to speech. So a good old-fashioned yelling on the phone, or get face-to-face. But, it encroaches into criminal when this abuse, this bullying, starts to affect whether it's their position at work or it starts to be threatening. I mean, there's a certain threshold there, and there's so many different kinds, whether it's over the phone, a picture, or
following somebody.
Yes.
Think about it. You're stalking them everywhere. With the GPS and the availability that we have technologically now, that bullying can expand. And so I think it's important to understand that on the criminal side, that the court's going to look at a standard that it has to be occurred more on one occasion, and secondly, it has to be something that a reasonable person would find to be offensive, right?
Right, definitely.
It can't just be this good old-fashioned yelling, as I said, because I have to tell you, that's human nature, and we have to balance, you're right, between the free speech of human nature, wanting to get your voice heard, versus taking it beyond a particular step. Now, that happens to kids in school, too. So you're talking about the cyberbullying and all the possibility of felonies that can occur from that as well as misdemeanors, but it's also a crime in school, correct?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's why the schools are required to have these policies, and the policies are usually signed off when the kid enrolls in the school. The parent or guardian has to sign off that they received that policy and that they read it. So that puts the parents on notice, and the acknowledgement that they signed off on that says, okay, I've read this and I'm going to make sure that my child does not do this. But I think you have to look at it also, if it's happening to their child, it's their duty to report this to the school as well.
Right, and the school needs to take action to do something with it as well. And so one of the things that I wanted to mention was about extracurricular activities. I was reading an article that said that if you interfere with a child, if one child to another child, or a parent to a child, adult to a child, whatever it is, if you're interfering with that child's extracurricular activities, that is equivalent of bullying, because it has that effect on that child.
Correct. It's not just the in-school, the academics. It's a sports, it's band, it's art class, it's, and it doesn't have to be on the school grounds. I mean, these activities happen at other schools or other places in the community as well, as long as they're under the supervision or the guise of the school, correct?
That's correct. The other thing is that you don't just have criminal remedies, which we talked about before in other podcasts, is that a criminal remedy provides for clear and convincing evidence. And not just preponderance of the evidence, but there is a remedy in civil court as well, correct?
Yeah, you can definitely, if the bullying is happening and it, unfortunately, we always think of in school, okay, fine, it's not an order of protection because these people may not live together or they're not family, but there's a no stalking order or a no contact order.
Right, and that's different than the no contact order that comes from sexual advances or inappropriate sexual conduct. This is an order that comes from that repeated, inappropriate level of your participation.
Right, and you mentioned it earlier, course of conduct, or you said there's repeated instances. What the judge looks for is there's got to be at least 2 or more incidences, and sometimes that's hard for people. What if it was just this one thing that happened? Well, you need to look at everything, whether it's the one time they said something and then followed up with a picture. I mean, to me that's 2 things.
Yeah, absolutely right. But there is a balancing act here, because the balancing act is that kids do fight. If you have a school situation, I remember when one kid, I'm old, the lunch boxes, we had those metal lunch boxes, and you hit the other kid in the head because they irritated you. There is going to be some of that, but there's a line that you cross when you're bullying them, and there's real consequences to it. There's kids committing suicide. There's kids engaging in self-inflicted harm. They need help in order to move that forward.
Right, and these kids, they want to belong. They want to be popular, and maybe they're embarrassed about a family situation or an economic situation at home, and so they're scared to tell. They don't want to be a snitch, but that's where we need to bring this issue up, because they need to know that they can get help.
What's interesting to me is, and it's a perception that I think people don't consider, is who is the bullier? So we're talking about remedies for the person being bullied, or the bullyee in using legal terms. But the bullier, studies have found that person has generally been exposed to domestic violence or comes from a home with domestic violence. The massive amount of research that's being done these days is incredible. And when you think about it in that light, isn't that interesting? So if I'm going to bully somebody else, there's something in my past that's gone on. So reaching out and trying to deal with both sides of that is an interesting consequence as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're trying to do is, educate people on this, and there's a cycle, and we want to stop that. The person that's bullying, maybe they were bullied, and so we want to stop that, because then, it just keeps going, and it's sad.
So if it's on the civil side, we can help you. You can call us for a consultation to talk about what your rights are, to explore the opportunity of a no contact order or some kind of prevention of the cyberbullying that occurs. And obviously, if it's a criminal matter, that's something that would have to go through the state's attorney, and that would be something that you would pursue separately. But we can help you with these questions, and we would suggest that everybody read these articles that are out there. There's a lot of material, and getting an education about bullying in this environment is key.
Absolutely.
The proceeding was a legal advertisement from Gwendolyn J Sterk and the Family Law Group.